How many of you have ever seen like an amazing advertising campaign? Something that just like it just hits you, like you love that commercial, or it makes you really think about something, and it's just the creativeness behind it. Maybe it's the music, maybe it's humor, maybe it's the seriousness of it, but somebody put some effort into like marketing this thing for you, and it just hits you like you were their target audience, and it just hits you right where you were at. Now, maybe they're selling something, and maybe they're trying to like sell some sort of comfort, or they're trying to sell some sort of convenience. This will make your life easier, right? These would be ways that we would try to bring people in, or hey, come buy my product, come try to get my product. I want you to imagine that you were Jesus 2,000 years ago. If you were setting up some sort of a marketing campaign, an advertising campaign, what would that look like? You see, because Jesus isn't preaching comfort. He's not preaching convenience. He's not doing anything like that. But crowds of people would gather. In fact, he often kind of pushed people a little bit in their own beliefs and challenged their thought process on things. But yet people kept coming. People kept wanting to hear, what does he have to say? We've never heard anybody speak like this before. Then he performed miracles for people. He started doing these things, and the crowds just began following him wherever he would go. You see, here's what we need to understand. Jesus didn't build his ministry around comfort, convenience, or having a big crowd. He built his ministry around having compassion for others. In the last few weeks, we've been in a series called A Better You, A Better Me. The first week, we talked about how Jesus, he called us to follow him, to let go of the old, to embrace the new life in him, and to follow him completely and wholeheartedly. The second week, we talked about how if we want to live differently, we have to build better habits. And then last week, we talked about having a faith that reaches. Not a faith that is stagnant, not a faith that is afraid, but a faith that will reach for Jesus even in the hardest of situations. This week, the big idea is this: if we want to live like Jesus, we must learn to be moved by compassion. If we want to live like Jesus, we must learn to be moved by compassion. We're going to read Matthew chapter 9, and we're going to start in verse 35. I'm going to invite that all of you would stand up with me as we read this today, okay? Matthew 9, verse 35. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields." God, we thank you for this word. Speak to our hearts today. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. The first point that I want you to understand today is this: see the need and move towards it. See the need and move towards it. Verse 35 said this: Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. Jesus just didn't stay in one place. He just didn't ask everybody to come find him. It says he traveled from village to village. He went to where the people were. He didn't wait for people just to come find him. He went to where they were. And he went and he saw their needs. And what did he do? He met their needs. He was moved with compassion. His love for the people moved him with compassion. He met their needs. Here's what we need to understand. When we have true love for other people, that love propels us to serve other people. That we are to love other people right where they are. And you're like, well, what if they don't deserve to be loved? It doesn't matter. We're still supposed to serve them. We're still supposed to love them. We're still supposed to have compassion on them. You see, compassion is the fuel for the mission. Compassion is the fuel for mission. In a church, if we don't have compassion, we've lost the fuel. We as a church must have compassion for our fellow human beings. We have to love them. We need to go to them. We need to serve them. We need to meet them in the needs that they have and show them what God's love looks like in their life. There are, many companies now that are very mission-oriented companies, and not all companies are Christian companies or whatnot, but they still believe in trying to serve humanity. I'm going to name a few you probably have heard of. I remember when I was a teenager growing up, all of a sudden this shoe company kind of popped out of nowhere, and everybody was all about it. It was called Tom's Shoes. Looked like wearing ballet slippers. But here was their mission. For every pair that was bought, they would send a pair to a child in need in a different country. There's a glasses company called Warby Parker that every pair of glasses that they sell, they will give a pair of free glasses to someone in need. There's a sock company called Bombas that they will sell these socks, but then they will give a pair of socks for every socks that are sold. They will give it to homeless shelters. Do you know that socks is the number one thing that homeless shelters ask for? You see, you can even build a fantastic business and still love people through it, still bless people through it. Compassion needs to be fuel for the mission. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18 says it this way. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Our actions will show that we belong to the truth. So we will be confident when we stand before God. How many of you ever heard the phrase, talk is cheap? Right? Anybody can talk about something. You can have grand ideas about, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Hey, I'm going to, but talk is cheap. Where's the action behind the talk? Where's the boots on the ground that are going to get it done? You see, our church, our mission statement is this: to love God, to love people, and to love people to God. That is who we are. That's our core of who we are. But oftentimes we want to just stop at the love God spot. I just want to love God because people are difficult. You might be elbowing somebody next to you, but yeah, you're that difficult person. But see, and in loving people, the hope is that when we love people, that we can love them towards God. That our actions, that our compassion towards them will help propel them to Jesus. And I get it. People are messy. Any of you got messy people in your life? I'm not talking about they're unorganized. You know what I'm talking about. You got people that are broken. That they have trauma, that they have things that they're trying to work through, that they are just have all kinds of issues and things and some of them are their own fault. Some of them are just the family that they grew up in. Some of them in their environment that they're a part of. There are things that they're facing and walking through, but it's just a mess. Sometimes it's hard to love people because they have feelings. Any of you know some people that are hard to love because they have strong feelings? Sometimes it's hard because people are just easily offended. Sometimes it's hard just because people are really broken. They don't know how to trust. They don't know how to receive love or compassion from somebody because they've never had it before. We as a church, we are called to love people to God. Here's what it's going to require from you and I. Time. I get it. We got busy schedules, right? If you look at my schedule, I've had somebody, I was pulling out my phone to put in something, and they're like, oh my goodness. Like, yeah. But you see, the important things get scheduled. And so if you really want to have compassion for people, maybe you got to schedule some of that. This day, this time, this place. If that's how busy you are, then schedule it. Make room for it in your family. Make room for it in your daily practice, whatever that may be. For others of us, how do we love people? How do we have compassion for it? It's going to require some sacrifice on our part. I'm going to give up some of my time. I'm going to give up some of my resources, maybe to help somebody, to bless somebody, to meet them in their need. Maybe it's taking somebody to the doctor. Maybe it's taking them to wherever they need to go. Maybe it's just going in and checking on them, a neighbor that maybe you haven't seen in a little bit. It's visiting somebody who's in the hospital, or visiting somebody whose spouse just passed away, or whatever it may be, that you're putting in the effort that you are going to be there with them. It's going to require some sacrifice on your part. But can I tell you something? It's worth it. It's worth it because it leads people to Jesus. It shows them that Jesus loves them. Our service towards other people helps show others who Jesus is. That scripture, this is what it says. It says the truth. It says show the truth through our actions. We need to show the truth through our actions. Talk is cheap. Let's not be a church where we're just going to talk about, look at the things that we do. Look at this. And no. That's cheap. Where are you at? What have you recently done to help somebody? What have you recently done to have compassion on somebody, to meet somebody in their brokenness and in their messiness of life? What have you done? You see, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, I go to that church and they do some things in the community. And yeah, you feel good because you are connected to them, but you actually don't do anything. Do we love people in action? When I was a youth pastor at my second church, we were doing all kinds of things in the community. We were doing a football breakfast every home game for our high school. We 1 year we gave out 150 bikes to 3 different elementary schools. We were having these community nights where we would call them maker nights, and we would give food that night. But as well, we were creating some sort of a craft. I mean, we made catapults and all different kinds of things, and we did awesome stuff. And what started happening is the community starts to take notice. Like, wow, look at the things that this church is doing. And so they reached out to the church and said, hey, we want to give you an award. Now listen, I'm not saying that we got to do things because we want a reward. But I remember I went to this award ceremony that they had, and they wanted us to all kind of share a little something, people who were getting awards, and I go up, and they give me this beautiful award, and it hit me, like, as I'm standing there, like, the community's watching. The community sees what we do or don't do. And they ask, hey, well, why are you doing so much? And I just said, well, the scriptures tells us that we are to love our neighbor. And you are our neighbors. You are a part of our community. And we want to love you. And we want to show you that we care for you. You see, we need to have a faith, a relationship in the Lord that leads us to have compassion on others, to put our faith into action. Back to Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Compassion. That word in Greek, here's what you need to understand about that word in Greek. It is one of the strongest words that there are for the word pity. Think of it in that light. This word compassion, it helps move people to the depths of their inner being. Maybe you have seen this before, where you have seen somebody who's struggling, or maybe you saw a homeless person, or maybe you had a friend who was weeping or whatnot, and there was something inside of you that compelled you to not only just witness and watch what they were going through, but to get up and go do something about it. That's compassion. You see this word right here, this is stirring something in our souls, stirring something within us that says, I cannot let that go by. I have to do something about it. I want to help. I want to bless them. I want to serve them. I want to show them who Jesus is. That's the kind of compassion that Jesus had. He was moved by the needs that he saw. So my question for you today is, what moves you? What moves you in your life? There may be some things that in my heart that may stir and move me. It may be different for you because maybe your life experience is different than you. Maybe you relate to somebody who's been on that path that you were already on. But what moves in you? What stirs that compassion inside of you? Now, what's the problem in this verse? He says that he saw this crowd. He said he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless. Confused and helpless. This means they were distressed and they were dispirited. Right? And it goes on to say they're like sheep without a shepherd. They're just going all over the place. They've got no one to guide them. They've got no one to help lead them to water or to food, to graze. They've got no protection. They've got no discipline. They've got no love. You see, Jesus sees this crowd and he refers to them as sheep. And he says, listen, they're confused. They're helpless. I need to have compassion on them. May our hearts stir the same way. May we have compassion on other people. May we see that maybe they're in a helpless situation. May we see that maybe they're in a confused situation, that they just don't know any better. It's the environment that they've grown up in. They've never had somebody love them. They've never had somebody shepherd them in their life. But would we be moved with compassion? Here's oftentimes what happens, right? We see people, but before we see people, we see the problem. What do I mean by that? You may see somebody that has a very evident struggle. Maybe they're an addict and you can see it all over them. So you see them and you look at them and you see an addict instead of seeing a son or a daughter of the king. Maybe you see somebody and it's very visibly that they are just a broken human being. And that's what we see them as. That's what we identify them as. But when reality hits and we really should go, wait, they're a child of God. They're a child of God who needs somebody to love them, who needs somebody to witness to them, who needs somebody to show them who Jesus is. That's what we are called to do. May we see people before we see their problem. And I get it. Sometimes people make it really hard to love them. But they still deserve love. They still deserve our compassion. The next point that I want you to understand today is this: the problem isn't the harvest. Here's what Jesus goes on to say in verse 37. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who's in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields." So Jesus, he sees the needs of humanity. And he goes, the opportunity is massive. The opportunity is limitless. But there's not many willing to work. There's not many willing to put in the time or the effort. You know, there's an old saying that says, for every problem, there is an opportunity. Maybe you have seen a problem. Maybe you've seen a problem in Tehachapi. Can I tell you, with every problem, there is an opportunity. So what is God stirring in you to say, hey, how can I find the opportunity in this to show the love of Christ? He talks about this harvest, that the harvest is plentiful. The harvest equals lives transformed. The harvest equals the number of lives transformed. What does that mean? It means people going to heaven or hell. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Who will tend the fields? Who will do the weed eating? Who's going to water? Who's going to, get the nutrients out there? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? There has to be workers who are ready to be there and ready to work hard. There is a potential of an incredible harvest, but it takes the laborers to make it happen. Compassion must lead to participation. Compassion must lead to participation. What are you doing about it? It's one thing to see the need, but what are you doing about it? How are you acting? How are you getting involved? How are you serving your fellow human, your fellow person from Tehachapi? How are you loving them? How are you meeting them right where they're at? This is what the Lord says in verse 38. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send. Now turn to your neighbor and say, send. To send more workers into his field. Now here's what I need you to understand about this word send. It is very important. And when we look at this in English, it doesn't quite carry the impact and the weight that the Greek word does. So let me tell you what the Greek word means. This Greek word is a forcible word. What do you mean by that? It means that it has some oomph, it has some power behind it. This is what this word send in Greek means: to thrust out. So pray to God that he thrusts out some people to go work the fields. This is what it also means. It means to drive forward, to push into action. So when we are praying to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest, we are also to ask him to push more workers into the fields, to thrust them out into the fields. So what does that mean for you and I? I just want to let you know that I have been praying for you, that God sends you out, that he will thrust you out, that he will push you into action, because the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So I'm praying to the God of the harvest to send more workers. Here's what I also want you to understand about this word send. It's also the same word in Greek that is used to cast out demons. What? Why is that important? Let me tell you why. Because sometimes it takes divine power to move people out of a position into their calling. Wait, what are you saying? Sometimes it takes a move of God to stir something up in somebody to get them from one situation into the next situation. So when we are praying to God to send out more workers, out more laborers, that is saying that, hey, he is stirring us to move. Why divine power? Why is the divine power needed? Because let's be honest, you and I, we really like our comfort. We really like our convenience. No, I don't want to be inconvenienced. I really like this. I really like to just go to church and get my gold star and feel good about myself. I really like that. When is the last time you cried with somebody? When's the last time you visited with somebody? When's the last time you met a fellow human who was in suffering and you met them in their need and you met them in their brokenness? When is the last time? That is what God is calling us to do as a church, that we are to be moved by compassion, not just sit in a church on a Sunday and be like, oh, I feel good. I got my little pump for the week and I'm ready now. No. I am calling and I am praying to the Lord that he would send you out, that he would move you from your comfortable position, your convenience position, and move you into your calling, which is to love all of humanity, which is to love your neighbors, which is to love the kid down the street, which is to love the shut-in down the street or in the apartment next to you, whatever it is, to love your coworker. That's what we are called to do. We need to be moved to compassion. We are not called to go to church. We are called to be the church. I get it. I love fellowshipping with you. I love coming into a place like this that's beautiful. We're called to actually do that. We're supposed to not forsake the assembling together. That's great. That's wonderful. But there's 6 other days of the week. So what else are we doing? We got to go back out into the mission field. We got to love on people right where they are. We are not called as Christians to sit in a church. We are called to serve. There are gifts and skills and abilities that are in this place that I have no idea what they are. There are things that you could do that I have no gifting in whatsoever. And that if you would just say, hey, I like doing this thing. Could I use that to serve the Lord? Absolutely. When do you start? You see, there are things that we could do together if we pull it all together, all of our resources, all of our giftings, all of our abilities, that we can make an impact in this city called Tehachapi. And I believe that's what God is moving us into, is into a season of greater impact. That this community will hear that name, CLA, and be like, man, I don't really know that I believe all the things that they believe, but man, do they love people. Man, do they have compassion. Man, do they show up when there is a need. We are not called to consume. We are called to contribute. What are we contributing to the kingdom? How are we serving others? How are we blessing others? So the scripture tells us to pray for workers. Why? Because when we don't have enough workers, that means people don't hear about Jesus. That means people don't experience the love of who Christ is. So I am praying that God sends you, that he thrusts you, that he drives you into, and that he pushes you into compassion for others. And it's going to make you a little uncomfortable. But that's okay. We're not called to comfort. Romans 10, verse 13. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring good news. We have the greatest news ever to share with people. And if we don't share, that means people miss out on heaven. That means people miss out on forgiveness. That means people miss out on restoration. That means people miss out on miracles. It says, how can they believe if they've never heard about Jesus? I didn't know until about 9 a.m. that my dad was coming to service. I'm going to look over here for a minute. I've told this story before. There was a little old lady when my dad was a child that invited him to come to church. His family didn't go to church. That wasn't a part of who they were. But a little old lady, filled with compassion, invited a child to come to church. And in that church, they heard about Jesus. And in that church, they made a relationship with Jesus. And in that church, generational chains and bondages that had been on their family were broken off. And from there, that little boy's family, one by one, started coming to church. Fast forward the story. The boy turns into a man. gets married, starts their own family. And they have a choice to make. Do we tell them about Jesus? And absolutely, they told us about Jesus. Absolutely, they modeled his love. Can I tell you, if you are a parent or a grandparent, one of the most important things that you can do is to show your kids who Jesus is. It's not just going to church on a Sunday. Show them who Jesus is. Lead them to Christ. Model it for them. You fast forward the story. I grow up. I get married. We have kids. And as we were worshiping today, it just kind of hit me. There's 3 generations here today. 3 generations worshiping the Lord today. Not only that, but you see, what my dad does for a living is that he helps children. He started a parachurch organization and literally have helped thousands of children to experience the love of Jesus through foster care, through adoption, through medical, through counseling, through all sorts of things, through all sorts of family services that there are. And as I think about that, I asked myself about that little old lady. What if she wasn't moved with compassion that day? What if she decided, I don't want to ask that little boy. No, that might come across weird, or that might come across. What if she didn't do that? Would I be here today? Would I be a pastor today? Would I even know who Jesus is? You see, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. I believe in 2026, what the Lord wants to do more than anything and through our church is that we would have compassion for other human beings. And I said it a few weeks ago that we are not going to be a country club church, that we are going to be a hospital for the sick, the hospital for the broken, and introduce them to Jesus and introduce them to healing. And I just want to let you know it's going to get a little messy in this place. Sick people, sinful people, broken people, they got issues, they got problems. And may we never, ever turn somebody away, but may we always embrace them right where they're at and help them move towards Jesus. We cannot expect perfection from anybody because we are not perfect. They will be in process. But may we be a church that we love to partner with people who are going through the process. Say, hey, let me encourage you. Hey, how can I help you? Hey, how can I help you through this circumstance, this situation? That verse in Romans, verse 15, it says, how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? In Greek, that word sent means this: to go to a place appointed. Appointed. Turn to your neighbor and say, appointed. You and I are appointed into Tehachapi. We have been sent to Tehachapi to love on people, to show the love of Christ. You have been appointed. You have been sent. So now you may ask, well, how do we do this? Listen, the harvest is plentiful. The opportunities are massive. So what does that look like? Can I tell you one of the things that burns deep in my heart that I'm just waiting for somebody to be like, I got it. I'll do that. I would love for us to have a food distribution program that happens on Sundays right before or right after church. Hey, let's feed your belly, but let's also feed your soul. Can I tell you we have a prison not that far from us? And scripturally, we're told that we are to go and we are to minister, that we are to love them. Well, who's willing? Who's ready to stand up and say, I will? In the book of Isaiah, there's a story where he says, send me. Send me. Appoint me. Send me. We have schools in our community that, man, they not only do they need volunteers, but can I tell you, go volunteer and be the light of Christ on that campus. Show that love. Be a coach. Do something in our community. Help somewhere. It doesn't have to be something that's necessarily out of CLA to help and make an impact, but go shine the light of Christ wherever you are. It could be helping the elderly. It could be helping those who have addictions. It could be going into the schools and just loving on the teachers and the principals and the admin and all of that, because they got a hard job. And then I want to talk to you just a moment about right here in our own walls of what we do. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Would you consider? Would you prayerfully consider volunteering? Well, where? What do we have? There's so many different things you could volunteer in. It could be in the nursery, holding babies, so that a mom and dad can get a few minutes to come inside and just hear about who Jesus is. It could be working over in the kids and help teaching these stories about who God is and how he loves them and all the things that he's done. Can I just tell you something about kids ministry? Kids ministry around the world is always the hardest to get volunteers for. And I don't really understand the reason why, because people are like, oh, I don't really like kids. Can I tell you, you got to get over that. Here's why. Here's why. Because I want you to think of a generation that is raised to hear the stories of the Bible, to hear a God who can part the Red Sea, to hear a God who can shut the mouth of the lion, to hear a God who stands with you in the fire, to hear a God who will provide manna from heaven, quail from the sky, so that those supernatural things, those miraculous things become commonplace to them, that becomes normal for them, so that when they get older, they only have an expectation for God to do the miraculous, to do the supernatural. You see, that's what we want to have in our kids' ministry and in our youth ministry, to show them who Jesus is before the world gets into their life, before all the doubt, before all the things come in and creep into their life. We want to show them who Jesus is so they never forget. Would you consider being a part of kids or youth ministry? Right now, I'm the youth pastor. I'm not complaining. I am happy to be there and happy to serve, but I know that's not my long-term position. Would you volunteer? Would you serve? Would you be somebody who's willing to make coffee on a Sundays to help people feel more comfortable, to help people feel more welcome in an environment? Would you be a greeter to welcome people and say, hey, welcome to CLA. We love you. We're glad that you are here. Would you be somebody that's willing to work at the info desk and let people know, hey, here's what we got going on. How can I help you today? How can I serve you today? Maybe it's being on the worship team. Maybe it's helping with maintenance and setup and repair. It could be all sorts of different things. There's things I'm forgetting, but there are so many different opportunities that you can serve right here in this church to impact our local community. You see, we've been called to move with compassion. And like I told you, I'm praying that God moves you to compassion. Be like, well, what's next? Well, what do we do? Listen, if you have not gone to Connecting Point, sign up for Connecting Point. We will have food, we will have childcare, and then we're going to show you all the different ways that you can get plugged in, that you can give of your time, your talents, your treasures to the Lord and make an impact. And you may come, and there may be the thing that your heart burns for, that thing that you have compassion for may not be in our list yet. You tell us and you let us know, and we'll say, when do you start? You see, a lot of times these are the types of conversations. Pastor, how come we don't do this? How come we don't do that in our community? I say, that's a fantastic idea. Are you ready to lead it? Oh, well, no, I just, Listen, there's so much more that we can do, but the workers, the laborers are few. So with love today, I'm not angry, but with love today, I'm calling us out. I'm praying that God sends us out. Because there's 35,000 people in this area code that need to know who Jesus is, that need to know the love of Christ. So will you be someone that's willing to show that? Jesus was moved by compassion. That compassion moved him into action. Church, if we are going to reach this harvest, we can't get caught up in our comfort. We can't get caught up in our busyness. We can't get caught up in our fears, and we can't get caught up in our excuses. The harvest is plentiful. And I want you to know that you have been sent.